Hey, Man here from Candidate X. A quick message before the show. It's safe to say we're all going through a lot during this period. Whilst there is a global community experience of we're in it together during this crisis, clearly there are specific experiences, perspectives and emotions that we all as individuals are feeling. We wanted to explore these aspects and we were lucky enough to be speaking with Rabia Awan. Rabia is an independent HR expert, a former candidate, client, community member and a friend of the show. Moreover, she is isolating alone from her family and is experiencing this largely by herself. Recorded as a special show on the eve of Ramadan, Rabia talks candidly about how the virus is impacting her, how she deals with it, and her vision and hopes post-lockdown for the future of diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So take a seat, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi everyone, it's a special from Canada X. I'm Man Wong, your host, and I'm joined by Sunil Diyal, who will be co-hosting with me today. We're joined by Rabia Awan. Rabia, I know you and Sunil have been catching up during this period, checking in on each other, and some interesting things have been raised, and we thought, hey, why not let's sit down and do a show about it. So, Rabia, hi.
Hello.
Sorry we kept you indoors on the hottest day of the year so far.
Oh, that's okay. That's all right.
Just for the purpose of everybody who's listening in, could you tell us a little about yourself and how you come to know Candidate X?
Yeah, of course. So, as you guys know, you actually placed me into one of my roles working at a fintech. For me, I got to know you guys as an agency first, and what really stood out to me, and the reason why I think we've kept in touch and kept such great connections, is the ethical approach that you always had. Both as that I felt as a candidate and as your client as well. I felt you really kind of understood the businesses, and you also understood your candidates as well. So that's how I got to know about Candidates X, was obviously through you guys. And just really buying into who you are as people and what you stood for, ethically as a business, and just as individuals as well. So obviously we've been speaking, you've been talking about these ideas with me for a while, and I was really kind of excited about it. So I don't think a lot of people, I mean, there's a lot of cultural diversity initiatives, but I think the vision that you have for it is slightly different. And it's a bit more in line with what I see, the new world looking like as well. And I think it's so paramount right now with coronavirus and what's happened, all the kind of campaigns that you'll be launching and doing, I think that's going to be so beneficial in such a time when, diversity and inclusion initiatives might take a bit of a backseat, for the meantime, until businesses kind of firefight through so many other problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
It's, I mean, Rabbi and I are going back, as you mentioned, to that very first time we worked together, and we have continued our conversations. But every time we speak, we literally record a podcast on podcast, don't we? And
so true.
It's about time we actually got it done officially. I think, because you are right, and I was quite keen and speaking to Man as well about getting you on this podcast, because I think, but I'm seeing a lot of reports, I'm hearing a lot of things, especially in this climate and conditions we're in at the moment. But it seems to be really wide, and I don't think there's enough focus on Pacifics as well. And I think you're in a unique position, and I'll be quite, as this goes on this podcast, I'm really keen to kind of get your perspective, not only on yourself, but you see the wider picture as well going forwards. I think it's going to be really important. So to cover that off as well.
Definitely. I mean, it's definitely been a journey for me. I fall into several, diversity backgrounds. I'm of an Asian background. I'm Muslim, and I'm a female. So, I think with me, I've had struggles in every one of those areas throughout my career. At one point or another, either being discriminated because of my Asian background, or mainly it's been the Muslim background post 9/11 especially. And also as a woman, a lot of the times, you are working with very senior stakeholders, and sometimes it can feel like a bit of a boys' club at places. I've had all sorts. I've been through all sorts in my career, and you have to be very resilient. But I do think a lot of businesses were waking up to those things and really stamping out those, kind of prejudices, as we were talking about earlier. And for me, I saw there was a bit of a positive shift in a lot of areas. I just hope we continue that, post COVID-19 as well.
In regards to this, first and foremost, Rabbi, I mean, you might be saying you go on your own, also with restrictions and not being able to go out. I mean, Matt and myself talk every day, and when we check in on each other, that we've got kids, and juggling that is quite hard.
Yeah.
But we have the stimulation, of that engagement of with the kids, etc. But how are you finding it in this moment in time? I mean, how has this been a challenge for you?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I think a lot of people that are on their own, they've probably never felt so lonely in their lives. And that's echoing from a lot of people I am speaking to that live alone. I think, if you've got a flatmate or a partner or children or extended family, as a lot of actually Asian people, are living in extended family environments as well. It eases that lockdown. I know people probably winding each other up equally, but you still have another human touch. The other day I was saying to my mum, I miss hugging someone. I miss human touch. I can't remember the last time I actually touched another human. It feels like that. I know however long we've been in lockdown, but yeah, it does definitely pose its challenges, especially around mental health, which is and again, such a great agenda businesses were pushing around mental health awareness. And I think right now, I just feel like it has gone a little bit quiet in some areas on the mental health side. But I think some businesses are equally really stepping up and actually really pushing the whole mental health agenda. But for me, yeah, I think mental health for me has been a struggle. I think the first few weeks when we first went into lockdown, I almost was having waves of anxiety, like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to go on for? I'm on my own. But afterwards, you really kind of get yourself together. And for me, I found, exercising, talking to friends and family, my nieces and nephews, my family, my friends, everyone have been such a great support network for me. And I was just saying to you, I've actually started little projects on the side, like I've started a cookbook randomly. And I've started cooking and writing all those ideas down and sharing them with friends and, and other people that are really like cooking a lot more at home. So yeah, I've had to really push myself to keep myself engaged and thinking about something other than the lockdown and then what the economy potentially crashing around us as well.
It's an interesting something you mentioned there about the social aspect of family. Because when the restrictions came down for a lockdown, it was your household only, and that's it. And one thing that struck me, and speaking to a lot of others, it's especially from the ethnic minority sort of population, what you classify as immediate family. It's not just your mum and dad or something. In ethnic minorities, the families actually are much broader than that. You'll find that your everyday life it engages maybe with a cousin or with an aunt, and they're equally as close, and they're actually really influential in your upbringing. So you see them in that same circle. So I mean that is that a challenge? I mean, you mentioned that, but I mean, how's that, especially as we're entering Ramadan at this moment?
Yeah, it's funny actually. My sister sent me a text this morning. She's like, "Oh, aren't you excited? Ramadan's here." And I said, "Is there something wrong with me? I'm actually not feeling as excited as I probably should be, as I usually am, because I'm on my own. And a big part of Ramadan is having that social." That social connection. So people open fast together, people pray together. There's something called the Tarawih prayer that people do together. And, we're not going to be able to do any of those things. And it's a time for giving. It's a time for reflecting. It's a time for, really being a community and actually helping other communities as well. And I think it's going to be really difficult because for me, I was thinking, oh gosh, Ramadan, it's going to be hard for me. I'm going to miss opening fast with my family. I'm going to, my friends, we all always open them together. And actually, we do this thing every year that where we open one fast at least together. Both my Muslim friends and actually friends that aren't Muslim, we all get together and we open it together just for something to do and to show respect of each other's, cultures and religions. And we're not going to get to do that this year. So I think we're probably going to have to find, again, creative ways around it. But yeah, I think coming from an ethnic background myself, I am going to feel that. And I did say that to my sister this morning. I said, I'm really going to feel just being by myself and opening the fast by myself, and not being able to have that kind of, fun cooking environment where everyone sits together and has a meal. So yeah, I definitely think a lot of people are going to feel that, whether you're on your own or with your family. It's an extended network, as you said.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you're in, sorry, man,
It's cool, man.
I'll talk in a moment. Because I've worked in various environments. I've worked out in the Middle East myself, and it's also a very important period on the calendar. It's that socializing aspect. But what usually I found, speaking to a lot of my ex-colleagues, friends, it's that actually being in a workplace during the day kind of helps channel, whilst you're fasting and stuff, channel your sort of focus onto your work element. Now, we haven't got that for the first time in ever, really. So again, that's another challenge. And, I link this back into how businesses are tackling it, how are supporting their employees. Because in the workplace, it's probably easier to do that. In the Middle East, I knew how we did it there. But how do you see businesses, or how do you feel business can support employees who will be going through this month of Ramadan and being alone at home and not having that social aspect? I mean, that's
definitely. I mean, I think you're right. I didn't really feel that until I myself worked out in UAE for a bit, and it was just normal. Ramadan was a normal thing to do, and all those prayers were normal, hearing the call of prayer, and all those things were normal. Whereas when I came back and came back to the UK, I thought, oh, it's interesting because on the positive side is that when I was fasting before and working, sometimes I would probably end up missing fasts as well, because it was back-to-back meetings. You're talking all day, you kind of need water, and or some people just struggle with it, and trying to kind of complete your prayers as well. You can't just it's difficult. It's more difficult. I mean, people make it work and make it happen, but some people do find it challenging, and I probably was one of them. However, at home, I'm finding there's more time for prayer and reflection, and I don't have to excuse myself from meeting or find a prayer room. And also the sense that, you kind of don't feel it as much, that because you're in the comfort of your home, and you're not around other people eating around you, because even if you're with your kind of family, they're probably also practicing it with you. So, and for me, being on my own, there's no one eating in front of me to make me think, oh, that burger, as you said earlier, that burger looks good, or, that coffee looks nice. So yeah, I think it's got its positives in that sense, that I can just get on with fasting and prayer and reflection, without all the other distractions.
I was going to say the same point, Sunil, really, about businesses supporting, such religious commitments such as Ramadan, right? I mean, in a virtual sense, what do you think businesses can or should be doing to support people in this world at this stage in time?
Yeah, so I think in the past, comms departments and HR departments have been great, sending comms out saying, it's Ramadan, guys, just be respectful and wary of your colleagues who may be fasting, and so on. And I think some businesses are still continuing that through their comms, saying, look, it's a Ramadan season, please be respectful. And they're still kind of trying to continue that over, from friends that I've been speaking to, both as employees and as part of HR and comms departments. They're kind of ramping up the communications that are going out, and still offering that support to their employees that they were before. But obviously now it's more virtual, and you probably don't have to include things like don't eat in front of your colleagues, but not that anyone ever says that, but it's just a bit of a, just be mindful, that someone's fasting or whatnot. So I think it's probably a little bit easier to manage because people are at home in their own environment. But I do think businesses should probably still try and do some comms, and maybe still celebrate the diversity and have like a, like sometimes they used to do lunch and learns in some places I worked at, and they did lunch and learns around Ramadan and why do we fast, and what it means for us, and so on, just an educational tool. So I think maybe it might be interesting for companies to actually continue lunch and learns online, and continue those initiatives that they were doing so well within the business, but bring it more virtually, really.
You mentioned actually in the office don't eat in front of your colleagues, etc. So, but actually it goes the same for virtual, because if you look now, I'm sure you guys got a coffee or some
Oh,
water in front of you. So suppose there's still some sort of
yeah.
guidelines around that, even if you're virtual. But I think we talk about mental health as well, and it can be something simple as a phone call, or just checking in. I get a message to all listeners. Actually, I get a message from yourself because you check in. I know you're very active on that. I know Man and myself and Jonathan all always check with each other to see how we are every day. I mean, it could be something simple as that, rather than spending thousands of pounds on a special training program.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. I think you're very right. I mean, I don't think any companies probably say don't eat in front of your colleagues, but they're probably about like just be mindful. The wording's probably slightly different. But I think you're right. I think it might just be how are you getting on? Because it's quite hot, or usually we're in the heat. Maybe I don't know if it's better or worse sometimes being indoors in the heat. So just to kind of check in on colleagues, see how they're getting on, and even mentally as well, it can be challenging going without food and water. So obviously our fasting is completely nothing, nothing at all. I know there's different fasting in different religions where they can have certain foods and certain beverages, but we can't have anything, and we have to wake up in the morning for something called sahur, where we actually eat something. So it's like 4 or 5 in the morning, so we're up really early, then back to bed, then up again to work, and then in the evening quite late the fast opens. So yeah, I think that can have its own challenges on mental health, and being alone and being in lockdown. It probably feels a lot more, because sometimes I used to find it actually a nice distraction, just going out for the day and just being busy doing things, and then coming home and opening fast, whereas right now it's just you. And as we were talking about earlier, I've noticed I've just been snacking. I'm just constantly finding something to eat. Even if I'm not hungry, I'm just like, let's just eat something.
You can only see my head on this video, thank goodness.
Exactly. So we were talking about this earlier. So I think with being at home, you tend to snack more, and you tend to eat more, and you tend to drink more. Whereas when you're out and about, you kind of just have your kind of set meals, or you're busy doing other things. So yeah, I think it's good to kind of check in.
It's I mean, one thing I found, especially working out in the Middle East during Ramadan, and something you mentioned before, it's an inclusive time of the year. So it's not because you're a Muslim that you're the only ones celebrating Ramadan or fasting. Actually, I found in the evening, especially in the Middle East, it comes to life. Everyone breaks fast, and I broke fast. I actually adhered to it when I worked with my colleagues, and I was invited to break fast with them. And then for the rest of the evening, you're kind of up until midnight and above. It's very social. Kids, etc., everyone, because the pattern changes. Obviously that's geared up in regards to the Middle East, how that's always been culturally. But do you think that we might take some learns from that, maybe, in how our working patterns are here in the UK, especially because working patterns are changing throughout this period? We were on a call last night at 9 o'clock till 10:30 conducting a meeting.
Wow.
Because it was the best time, because it was quiet and the kids were sleeping. Potentially, do you think this could have a dynamic change into how, if we go more virtual going forwards past the pandemic, do you think potentially companies might take that into consideration and might start changing patterns to work well with their diverse workforce, maybe?
Yeah, do you know what? Actually, it's a really good point that I hadn't thought about before. I think there may be a change in working patterns, because as you're saying, some people have childcare commitments, whereas now businesses might say that's fine, you can be with your children through the day and do what you need to do, especially or if you're a single parent as well, it's just you can't do that swap that you do when you've got a partner, like you do. You look after the kids this time and I'll look after them this time, which a lot of my friends and people I know have been doing. But when you're a single parent, it's harder, because that's the only person the child has throughout the day. So yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. Maybe businesses will say, right, you know what, you can up till however long you can kind of be with the kids, and then maybe we can move our meetings to the evening. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. I think businesses may change working times and working patterns, and actually it'll be interesting how this works with flexible working. Well, because obviously there was lots of they changed the flexible working laws a while back where everyone can apply for it, and it'll be interesting to see if people will still need to apply for flexible working, or if businesses will just be like, you know what, let's work around this virtually.
I mean, there's 2 points there really. One is going back to Ramadan very quickly. The whole ideology of it being very community led
Yes.
makes this festival and this period very interesting to see, because you're isolated. You don't necessarily have that community feel. So, for me, someone who's not a Muslim, when on the outside kind of looking in, I have so much sympathy for that. But there is one thing that I do know: human spirit is quite resilient, and how
Yeah.
we work ways round into still becoming very inclusive and community minded is interesting, because I feel that there's an immense opportunity to go, actually, have we considered everybody? Because usually you might just send an invite out, for instance, to open the fast, as you say.
Yeah.
People may or may not come in and get involved.
Yeah.
But what you're trying to do when you're in this situation is kind of go, right, I know that person's on their own. We have to get hold of them so that they feel, and I'm hoping that's what we as people gravitate towards too. On the element of the new working world, it really is down to, I guess, what the worker is experiencing, right? Because I think if I remove the children aspect, my wife and I working from home is brilliant. And if you think about the basis of, if I'm working in the office physically and I have to nip out to maybe get my teeth sorted out or pick up my kids, there's always that awkwardness, whether you have a great relationship with your boss or not.
Yes.
Other people kind of going, where's he going, or where's she going for the day?
So true.
And we talk about this a lot. And whereas people may disagree or agree with us, and you're a woman as well in particular, I think you're held to a different standard doing the duties of a mother, right? Which is ridiculous. But you are held to that kind of observation. Go, where's she going? Where's he going? But in this world, the only thing that matters when you're working is, well, okay, it doesn't really matter, because I'm not going to keep watch on you all day. So if I nipped out after this call to go do something with my kids, but my output is what you're expecting and what you need, does it really matter? And once people have those precedences, it'd be interesting once we enter back into this world, how actually the job applicant, the seeker, will going to go, nah, unless you're offering it in this way, I actually think I'm better off doing it this way. And that might segue into another larger conversation about, actually, does that then save money for organizations? Because, okay, I can give you this balance, but we won't pay you as much anymore. Or do you know what I mean? And what you want and matter to you changes, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's interesting, man. Do you think that will be heavy? Do you think the BAME community then, or population, will suffer as a consequence of that? Because businesses are looking at going, well, how much do we have to cater for candidates, employees from a BAME background? Because there's all these other factors to take into account. So where we've been, struggling, I'm going to be open and honest about it, struggling in specific sectors to build a population of BAME employees and candidates. Do you now think, I suppose, will this have a negative effect as we come out of this pandemic in regards to increasing that population, which was on the agenda before we entered it? So it could be at the reverse, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one to say. I mean, obviously, I sincerely hope not, but it depends. As we talked about in many discussions before, I think when it comes to acceptance, it's about whether you've built your company with culture in mind to begin with. And if you do, then you're accepting of the fact that you're going to hire people from different backgrounds and their requirements are all different. We're three unique individuals on this call alone. What I need and want can be overlapped with what the two of you, but in the main, I bet they're very individualistic to myself and my family's needs, and you are your own. And we respect each other in that way. And I think if we could do that as people and as friends and as colleagues, then if I'm an employer, I have that duty also, if you see what I mean. And, belief and religious ideology and all those things that are important to you as an individual is a protected characteristic. So in that mindset, I think you need to, Chinese New Year, for instance, is a date in the diary. And if you live in Singapore or Hong Kong, you get a lot of holiday, right, that period in time. I think it's probably not the same thing to say I need the same amount of time off to celebrate Chinese New Year when I live in England. But if you're religious, I think that is different, because a faith is what that is, right? So, I mean, I don't want to skirt the answer to your question there, Sunil, but I hope not is the honest answer. And I'd be very surprised if people thought of it that way.
Well, I'm a bit fearful, if I'm honest, because it's something Rabia mentioned about after 9/11 and the thought process and how she felt after that.
Sure.
Now, I've seen so many things in the media. I've seen videos going around WhatsApp of people talking about, and it's quite frightening. their view on a Chinese population of Chinese people. I know there's over 1 billion people that fall into that category, but it was a consensus and a blanket approach that they all of a sudden don't like Chinese people, full stop. And for me, I thought entering this pandemic, and what I liked about it is that we all kind of for a moment forgot. We had these differences. We're all on an equal playing field now. Everything's been leveled out. Let's get back to being human beings and being one. Mm-hmm. What I'm beginning to see the longer this goes on now is this separation beginning to happen, where people looking to attribute blame. They're trying, and it's quite scary. I was speaking to someone from Poland the other day, and they're worried about what's happening there, political horizon over there. So, what I'm concerned about is how this might affect candidates coming from that specific background, going for jobs or applying for roles after this, if there's this growing sort of viewpoint, or wrongly so, of specific sort of backgrounds.
Yeah, I think so. I think, as we were talking before, there has been some newspapers, who we're not going to mention, obviously, that have been pushing this agenda of, I think, yes, there's a statistic that there have been, people from certain backgrounds that may have contracted it more, but it's almost the wording they're using, they're spinning it as if that background is spreading the virus. And when they're talking about someone that's died from it, they're mentioning their background a lot more. But yeah, I think with different papers kind of like almost pushing blame on the BAME community, to say that it's it's almost coming from us and we're going around spreading it. It's not healthy.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I saw the statistic from NHS, right, on a population of NHS employees, and as you can imagine, a large percentage of that, actually considerable percentage of that, fell into ethnic minorities, employees from ethnic minorities. Now, if you've got a large population that fall into that bracket out of the whole employees at NHS, and you're seeing the deaths now of NHS workers, and a large proportion that is from the BAME community, right? So, but they're not going around spreading it anywhere. It's because they're exposed to it, because they're working every day around the virus, and that's what's happened. So, that contributes to the overall picture about how many people from an ethnic minority background are actually, dying from COVID-19, because a lot of them work in a health system.
Yeah, not just the health system. Sorry, man.
No, go ahead, Rabia.
But also other kind of key areas such as transport. Transport, health, a lot of certain jobs. Yes, there's probably a higher number of ethnic minorities in those jobs that are the jobs that are still people going to work and being out there at the moment. So, yeah, you're right. That's a good point.
Thing is, it's for a media, paper, clicks, all that sort of stuff, you need sensationalism, you need clickbait in order to get engagement. Sadly, that's the world we live in. And to your point there, Sunil, it is scary. It's very fear. My mum, when it first started, we're Chinese, and her friends that live in the north of the country did experience some verbal abuse just being out and about. I actually sent a picture to Sunil of a note that was left outside a Chinese takeaway that was of a client of my brother's. He's an accountant, and the note was vile. It was full of racial hatred, very direct about Chinese being the reason this is here, and we don't deserve to be here, and all these different things. And it's prompted my mum in one way or another to stay indoors more. I mean, she's isolating anyway, but she literally won't go out without my dad. Just for walks. She certainly won't go to the shops on her own, because she doesn't. She's in her 60s. She doesn't need that sort of that aggression and aggro. There is always going to be a percentage of people that sit sadly on the ignorance scale when it comes to certain things, and then associating race as a reason why we're in this predicament. It's not the case at all. And people in positions and responsibility and power have got a job and responsibility and accountability to change that narrative. Yes. And sadly, the guy over in the White House over in the States calling it a Chinese virus doesn't help, because he's got so many loyal disciples that believe everything he's saying, sadly. So, I know what you mean, Sunil, because it is kind of fearful. And it's such a shame that instead we're not looking at it from this perspective, where actually those groups of people are the ones that are fighting a battle for us, ill-equipped, you know, day in, day out, that are sacrificing their own personal circumstances to be with their kids in many instances, so they don't infect them, to be with their mums and dads for many instances, so they don't affect them as well, on their own, and having to deal with all these things. And it's a shame that people instead are focusing on the fact that, well, you're only bringing race up for this particular reason, rather than observing the fact that actually the virus is indiscriminatory in one sense because it can affect almost anybody, but its impact is much more specific to people in the BAME category.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good point that man's made, that actually the virus is not discriminating anyone based on anything. So why are we now making this an issue of race or anything else? You know, it's interesting. I had a friend of mine, and she said, you know, before when we were still traveling and on trains and so on, so she was going back and forth from work, and she's actually Korean. And she was on the train, and so I said, oh, don't sit next to that Chinese girl. And she said, I felt like saying to them, firstly, it's not a Chinese virus. And secondly, I'm Korean. So it's just that ignorance. It's just that absolute ignorance that's not helped by the media spinning stories and making it a focus on a BAME issue, because it's not.
In Korea, ironically, are down to double-digit new cases, aren't they? They've got it so well controlled. It's incredible.
About that, and she said she felt like you know, now she feels like rewinding time back and shouting stats out and stuff.
This is interesting because we go back into the workplace and linking this back in, right? So as Canada X, we're very big on the equality inclusion piece, and we want to look at within the workplace, how do we take this bias out, especially in the recruitment process. Now, with this, taking this into mind and what we've just spoken about there, and especially for you, Rabia, coming from the HRD sort of background, how would you propose, or how do you think we might tackle this going forwards when we're doing, for example, the recruitment process? You know, someone like Man going for a job after this, and he has to put down Chinese. But how do you think that potentially we could make this take this bias as much as we can out of that process to give him an equal chance of getting a role?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't like it when they have these questions, and I know it's kind of diversity monitoring, but why? You know, just there should be a simple application process that doesn't make you tell the employer, you know, or your background, you know, your diverse background. I should just be an applicant and a candidate, and that's it. You know, I should be nothing beyond that. I should be, you know, is this person a cultural fit? Are they good at the job? You know, can they deliver? And all those things should be taken into consideration. And we shouldn't be focusing on someone's background. The problem you have there is some businesses that are good at not doing that. If you have a name that's a very kind of ethnic name, straight away, you know, you're identifiable as someone from a BAME background. So I think a lot of businesses need to almost scrap any kind of identification based, you know, that links the candidate to that job, and just focus on the abilities to do the role. And actually, you know, how much percentage of that is based on, you know, how well they can do the role, how much percentage of that is based on what the job description is, and how they kind of like where the skills are transferable, and actually attitude and cultural fit and other things. I don't think we should be focusing at all on, you know, what the person's background is, which a lot of businesses are getting better at doing. But, you know, people do have unconscious biases. I think moving forward, I think there needs to be a lot more investment. There needs to be a lot more investment in training the people that are in charge of recruiting, and making them realise that, you know, we're just looking for skills here, and we're looking for skills matches and transferable skills. We're not looking for, you know, what the person's background is, and how to, when you do find yourself going down that road, how to, you know, because we're humans and some people will have that, how to kind of snap out of it and just focus on the role and the candidate as a candidate, not as a, you know, woman from this background, this colour, and so on. So I think there needs to be a lot more investment around those kind of tools and how we recruit in the first place. I think that's very important.
Do you think companies should be held more accountable then? I'm talking about reporting, publicising data around this process, because, and I'm not only talking about paying lip service by if we saw the gender pay gap, for example, came into play because of the coronavirus. The deadline for the year was, I think, end of March. 1/4 of all companies in a FTSE 250, only 1/4 reported within that time frame. The others hadn't submitted a report by then, and they were kind of given a leeway because of this, so it got extended. The fact that 3/4 hadn't even presented anything at that last point, that, you know, within the last few weeks, tells me how important it might have been for them on their agenda. Do you think there should be a lot more sort of governmental sort of push to get numbers publicised, so companies are being totally transparent about how they're hiring?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if I'll be popular for saying this, but I think, yeah, there definitely needs to be a government push for businesses to, you know, look at what others are doing and actually be very transparent about their numbers. But equally, we don't want to end up in a situation where companies are just, like you were saying, almost paying lip service and just hiring just to kind of complete their numbers, like we've seen with some of the you know, initiatives that have happened around the gender pay gap. You know, a lot of, because I think that creates an environment where, when, like for the gender pay gap, for instance, if a woman really was the right person for the role and she got the role, you do have some people in the office that are whispering, say, oh, they just got her in because, you know, they needed more women on the board. No, she earned that spot, actually, and that's why she's there. So I worry that I don't want there to be the situation where they're saying, oh, it was a diversity hire. So I think we have to be smart about how we do that. Yes, we need to, you know, say, right, this is how many diversity hires we made, this is what our workforce looks like. But equally, it's not just about giving data, it's about implementing tools to make it a natural process. So you're naturally making diversity hires rather than, oh, let's just get a few diversity hires to push our numbers around, and then actually, you know, completely demotivate those people and discredit them.
Yeah, because you're right, it causes resentment within the workforce because someone's got hired specifically because they match a certain background, and we need that background to tick a box or for a quota. And that's one candidate X. I mean, my personal views on quotas and how they work.
Yeah.
I'm quite vocal about that as well, actually, because we're all about equality and it's all about the best person getting a job. And I think if companies could actually have something that they could publish to say, actually, this is the hires and this is the main variables why we hired, what we hired against, and this is why we've got this workforce. Now, I think a lot of people, no matter what background you're from, are going, okay, fine. And we all had equal chance and they've actually hired the best person for the job.
That's it. I mean, equally, if you're a white male, you can be discriminated against. You know, anyone can be discriminated against in a hiring situation, and that's why it shouldn't just be we're just focusing on you know, minority backgrounds or, you know, females or anything like that. It should be we're hiring the right person for the job, and in order to do that, it needs to be almost, you know, skin deep. It needs to be deeply embedded into the company, from the way you're training your managers to, you know, your recruitment tools that you're using, to the way you're recruiting, to the training that you're giving around recruitment and so on. So I think it needs to be deeply embedded into the business, and it needs to be more than just a statistic that businesses release each year to say, oh, this is what we've been doing. You know, there needs to be some answers around how do we make it a natural thing, that, you know, diversity hires want to come and work for us, or, you know, or that women are on the board and you know, they feel like they have got the right to kind of go up there and be there and not be questioned for why they're there. So yeah, I think there needs to be a lot of conversation still. There needs to be a lot of thought around how we really embed that into companies really deeply.
I'm curious, what do you both think then when we come out of this, the lockdown, and grab a coffee on the way into work? Do we think actually businesses will, because of this experience, become more inclusive and respectful of diversity, or do you think all the good work around diversity and inclusion, genuine you know, work that was going on, but actually come into practice when we're back into a physical space, whether that maintains itself?
From my perspective, I mean, that in ideal world, I think this pandemic should be a lesson to us as a human race, about the path we've all taken up to this point, how things were getting, how fragmented the world was getting, you know, wars, disagreement, everything. I'm hoping this is this period, whilst it's been awful, will put things in perspective for us as one. My concern is going back into normality, as I've put it, normality, is that as a SME owner myself, it's kind of trying to stay alive, and trying to understand where can you get the next income from to stay afloat, to pay your mortgage, to take home, to support your staff, etc. Now, my fear is that a lot of individuals, a lot of companies might use that as an excuse to really accentuate their sort of own views and how they believe things should be and operate. And if there's too many of those, then they will get leeway, because all they can point to is going, well, the economy, we're in a global recession, we need to stay alive, blah, blah. And all this gets swept under the carpet. One of the questions I was going to ask Rabia, from not only from a Bain perspective, but from a HR perspective also, is that, do you think the BAME community does enough, or do you think the BAME groups do enough to help regards to the diversity aspect within the workplace? And by that I mean, do you think we collaborate enough with each other? The senior members, the sort of the figureheads, the mentors. Do you think, from a BAME perspective, that we do enough, or are we too fragmented in our approach? And that's why maybe businesses are not getting enough information in the right way about actually how you should be building that culture to cater for all of your employees, etc. And actually, this is how beneficial it will be, because from an income perspective, it's been proven from data that actually a more diverse workforce makes you more profitable, but you just harness it in the right way. So, I mean, sorry, there's a few questions in there, but I was just gonna, from a HR perspective, ask you, or know from that, how do you view that?
Yeah, I think we do and we don't, in the sense that I think sometimes it's an individual journey. It's based on your individual journey. So, you know, if I am from a certain BAME background and, you know, I've had a great time, I've been promoted, you know, my career's done really great in the business, I might not feel that, you know, that diverse tension that's going around, and I might not have had that journey that someone else in another department or another area of the business might feel, actually, you know, I'm not progressing forward because of my background, or because, you know, because of whatever reasons. So it's about, you know, taking a step back. And I think this has actually, the coronavirus has given us time for reflection. Like, it's given people time to reflect. It's given them time to think about what they were doing as managers and leaders and employees and so on. And I think actually some people have found themselves as well and become more comfortable in their skin. So maybe when we do go back, the world will look new, in the sense that people will want to speak up more, but maybe they didn't want to, and say, actually, I want to put my hand up and say, I can see an issue here within the BAME community that, you know, needs to be resolved. So let's all work together to do that. Whereas before, I mean, I know I've probably, when early in my career, when I wasn't so confident to speak up, I probably sat quietly and didn't raise things that had happened to me, or that I'd seen, you know, going on around me. And then when I did have that time for reflection, and I grew within my career and as a person, and, you know, I then did start, you know, pulling people up on those issues and trying to resolve them, as a HR, you know, leader, and both as an employee, or as now a, you know, someone that kind of goes into businesses and works with them to help them through these things. I'm a bit more vocal about it. So I think maybe I'm hoping when people go back, they may be a little bit more comfortable in their skin, having time on their own and to reflect, to then go back and raise issues that maybe they were staying quiet on before. But then equally, I think with the market being, you know, so, you know, I know we're kind of entering into my God, I can't say the word. I know we're entering into a bit of a depression, according to some specialists. And, you know, maybe people will be too scared to lose their jobs. And actually that's going to push those people that were confident to speak up before, to not speak out, because they don't want to lose their job. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see kind of where we end up with that one. I'm hoping people will be a little bit more vocal than they have been, and will want to push, you know, the BAME agendas and other diversity agendas forward a bit more. But yeah, there's always that risk that it might not happen because people are so worried about job security.
And that's why I think things like what Canada X is doing, and some others out there do, really think it's getting that one voice and getting all the. I'm not talking about a large they have so many things to do on a day-to-day basis. You know, you have to manage everything, and I think if you could get the support and advice, look, I have all intentions. I don't care who I hire. I want my team to be the best team, doesn't matter who they are. But they, you know, by doing that, I'm hiring a diverse workforce naturally. I just need some help on how do I structure my business to cater for everybody. And I think, you know, that's where I think we, as everyone, really has a responsibility to help each other, and may you be a business or an individual, to ensure it's the right sort of approach. And you know, and that's, I think, I'll let Man speak in a moment, but hopefully that's what sort of the community piece could actually do, I feel.
There's some practical challenges that I can envision, you know. I mean, I read earlier before we came onto the show, got an alert to come through, another near on 5 million people in the US, that is, have registered for unemployment now, and that brings the total just shy of 27 million in 5 weeks. That's an enormous amount of people, right, that are going to be looking for work, and that's very sad to hear. I'm not quite sure what the numbers are going to be in the UK, but they're going to be high, right? I mean, we're witnessing major domestic brands suffering. You know, I talked to my mother-in-law yesterday, who's from Mauritius, and she told me Mauritius have filed to close now. You know, that's their national airline. So there's so many of these things. You know, Primark hasn't sold a thing in 5-6 weeks. Cat Kitson went into administration. Yeah, exactly, right. So there's all these things, and so these challenges present. If you are going to come out of this and are hiring, if to Rabia's point earlier, if you're not equipped with A, the know-how, and B, the actual workflow processes and the tech maybe to take volumes of applicants, because that's what you're going to get now, volumes of applicants, and disseminate the relevant ones for you without bias. So you're not just scanning names and going, actually, my team's full of fellas and they all love football, so make sure there's culture fit that they're going to brand as. I just need a fella who plays football. I mean, I'm being very broad and generalistic, and that's not what always happens, but I've known it to happen that way in all the time I've been doing recruitment. But for us to avoid these things, you have to give these people, these people in positions of power and hiring, those tools, these toolkits, in order to make the right choices. Otherwise, you know, if we have anything like a fraction of that number that the US are yielding out, you can imagine recruiters or hiring managers or whatever it might be are going to be inundated with volume. With volume, and they're not going to know the reasonable approach to go back to people, and they're not going to be able to preserve their brand integrity. They're not going to have to create a positive candidate experience, all these different things. And you're trying to underpin all of this through diversity and inclusion. It's a tremendous challenge that we can see, but hopefully we can segue into a more positive note. I'm just mindful of time here to bring this on towards a close.
I think there does need to be, I think in our last podcast, say we tend to hire people that remind us of ourselves almost.
Of course.
I think there needs to be a lot more leaders and a lot more people in leadership roles and almost recruitment roles that are from diverse backgrounds, because then you will be more open to hiring someone from a diverse background and probably be a little bit more relatable as well in some ways. So I think that's another challenge as well businesses will face. I think there definitely needs to be more recruiters and, you know, kind of internal, external, and more people in leadership roles that are pushing these agendas, including kind of HR areas that actually have a diverse background and people from, you know, a wider diverse background, because otherwise we'll never hire like ourselves, as they say, if you can't kind of think out of your own box.
Yeah, I mean, that construct has been defined by your own mind.
Yeah.
And what you've been accustomed to. That's why I feel companies that will do well in these before the virus and through the virus and beyond the virus are the ones that built their companies from with culture at the heart of it. Always being mindful about that aspect, because now we're in a situation where if you are not capable of being inclusive and working with a diverse group of people, you will fail, because you need to collaborate in ways that, you know, as we've spoken about in this conversation and the other podcasts, people are dipping into a toolkit they probably never have had to. Yeah. And it's an interesting platform as to what people are going to run against at the moment, right? Yeah. So, yeah, who knows? Definitely watch this space with this. I'm just, as I said, I'm just mindful of time and just kind of segue into sort of finish and to bring it to close on a bit of a wider note. What's been positive for you in this lockdown, Rabia?
Yeah, I think as I was saying, that reflection, I think the time for reflection. I mean, for some people, actually, this time might affect people's confidence as well. So that's something to be mindful. So as we were talking before, it's a time where some people have been, their confidence has been affected because of losing a job or other things.
Of course.
But for me, it's been a time for reflection. And although it's scary, I've been able to, focus on spiritual aspects of my life, such as prayer and religion, and, kind of get to know myself a bit more, and, learn new skills that I've been doing online, which I didn't have to do. Life admin, just this bit like that. I think that's been really helpful for me. Because it's almost cleared a lot of clouds, in the sense that things that you didn't get to do before because it was rush all the time. So yeah, for me, positive has been self-reflection, and also just feeling the love of humanity, and actually feeling like, I know people keep saying we're all in this together. We are. It is a non-discriminative virus. And it's been a time for me to really learn about people I speak to, maybe on a business level, on a deeper level. So I think for me, the positive has been actually getting to know people and who those people really are. People that I probably spoke to on a work basis, and you never really got to know them. It was like, right, do what you need to do, have the conversation and move on. But I've actually had to, sorry, just to like not make it a long answer, I think I've had a lot more meaningful conversations.
Yeah, definitely less transactional, isn't it? You end up going through some levels with people, right?
Yes, yeah. Very surprising, meaningful conversations with people I'd probably never had been able to have those meaningful conversations with before. So that's been a real positive for me, definitely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think we can. It's really interesting, isn't it? What the one. If we had to extrapolate things that were really positive, what a real key one for me is that people seem to be a bit more open to sharing how they're feeling, which is really important in this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, Sunil knows my moods are like a yo-yo sometimes. I struggle with mental health anyway, and then being in this environment here, I have feelings of guilt with not giving the kids and my wife what they need and to stimulate themselves mentally. Are they keeping healthy? All that sort of stuff. And am I working too much so they don't get my attention? And then on some days I'm really manic and I'm super happy because I've got this time with people, and it scares me sometimes. I sit down and take a breath and go, what's going on? Why am I feeling like this? So. And I keep saying these things out loud, and I want to share because I'm hoping other people are going to say, "Yeah, I'm the same, so don't worry about it." Otherwise, you end up driving yourself mad.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy that you've even shared that. I think that's really important right now with the whole, mental health aspect of this. Is before maybe we were a little bit scared to say, especially as a leader, you sometimes feel almost judged to say, I'm struggling today, and I'm so depressed, or I'm feeling so anxious. Whereas now I feel like another positive, well, maybe because we're all kind of in this, pressure cooker. Together, maybe now it's a bit more acceptable to say, actually, I'm really down today, or I'm feeling very anxious, or I'm not feeling great today. It's okay to say that, and I think people are starting to realize that.
It's okay to be human, right?
Yeah, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah. It's okay for your team to know how you feel, because it's your team who will support you. I totally share everything you both said, actually. One thing, I think, obviously spending time with my children for me, but funny enough, really weird, I've actually been able to understand where my limitations or boundaries might be as an individual, and what I need to do to improve myself, because I'm so used to running 110 miles per hour, and actually never take time to take stock of that. And that's what's going through my mind now, and it's quite interesting.
I think, mate, as well. You're in this stage in life with. We talked about this a number of occasions. You got two kids of a certain age where you're spending such enforced time. Don't get me wrong, it is enforced, but it doesn't mean it's not pleasurable and you're enjoying it. Where you've gone, I mean, you've admitted this to me, haven't you? And said, "Damn, I've missed so much of them day to day."
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you both the question. As fathers, do you feel more included now in in your children's? I mean, I'm sure you still make the efforts to be included and be there, but do you feel a bit more included now?
I do. I also feel very scared.
Okay.
If I was on my own with the two children who are 7 and 9, having to teach them
Mm-hmm.
and keep them stimulated and can run a business or conduct business to generate income to look after them, it's really scary for on that. But I do really cherish time. I mean, I've seen them more now. I've seen more of them now in these last 4 weeks than I have probably in the last few years.
Like, who are these people?
Yeah, I've seen their personalities and in a short brief of time they kind of develop. I'm like, wow, because I'm so used to just seeing them before I go to work and putting them to bed, hopefully, by the time I get home. And then they've got the weekends, which are manic. So, yeah, but I do also feel kind of still guilty for that. And am I overcompensating now in trying to do everything with them whilst we can now? But yeah, it's a really strange one. I'm really appreciative, but I'm still really scared.
How about you, man? How do you feel more included?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting. You know, my relationship, I've got 2 kids. My relationship with my daughter is very good and extremely strong. We're very close anyway. And the difficulty with her is she's about to go to school. And the time we usually spend with each other in the evening remains largely speaking the same. At the weekends is a bit difficult because we can't go anywhere now. Whereas before I'd take her to places, you know, she has classes and all that sort of stuff. So it's trying to find a different routine with her to keep her engaged. And she's so understanding. She's not even 5 yet. And she knows you know, I've been reading a lot of stuff online now to explain what's going on to my child, and she understands it. And she's very human about it, which is great because she misses her family and her friends, and we're trying to keep that engagement. My son is very close to my wife. I mean, he's only 18 months old, and you know, I won't go so far as to say that he doesn't like me. Really, he tends to just hit me around the face. But during this period, because we've spent so much time with each other, you know, I've kind of just forced my bond with him. So that's been really nice and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I've never felt unincluded, I guess, with my family. But this period has meant that, you know what, it really tests your partnership abilities with your other half, is what it is. Because it's like, you know, I think I mentioned this to you before, my wife just recently started a job. So she's going through a virtual onboarding, and which is another conversation in its own. And she therefore has extreme pressures and all that sort of stuff, because regardless of whether you're in the office or not, you want to make a good impression, you want to do well in your role, find your feet, get to know everybody. So I'm very, very mindful that she gets the time that she needs, which therefore means I take the children, because they're at that age where I've come into the loft to hide away. And they're outside in the garden, but otherwise, if it was raining, they'd be jumping all over me. You know, Sunil and I have spoken loads on a video call, and they're climbing all over using me as a frame. They don't know. They don't understand what's going on. You're on a phone, but I want your attention, right? Yeah. So it's trying to balance these things, which is difficult, and it leads back to the point about what we said earlier. I think, look, not everybody's going to work from home with these commitments, but it does make you reflect a lot about actually what is important to me. You know, and I'd like to say majority of people that you ask, hopefully they will say family is what's most important. Because I bet for you, you know, being on your own, like you said, you miss your home and I bet you miss your mum furiously.
Oh, I do. I'm dying to kind of see my nieces and nephews and my sister and their partners and my mom and, you know, everyone. I'm just really missing my family, and you know, sometimes you get so busy, and I feel like as soon as this is over, first thing I'm going to do is run over and see them all and hug them all. And
yeah, of course.
I'm definitely really missing them. And actually, it's funny, I was having conversations with a lot of my single friends that were like, great to have a partner right now, wouldn't it? So I think a lot of people are having that as reflection moments as well. So maybe now I need to stop putting my career first and actually start thinking about both men and women, actually, and actually start thinking about settling down, because I think all the single people are really feeling that.
Don't do it.
You know, missing that family connection and children and everything else. So yeah.
I've heard about people that have in relative terms are a new couple, and they found themselves in isolation after going out with each other only for 3-4 weeks, and I could really see that going 2 ways, right? you know, amazingly well, which that's the one.
The one.
Oh my God.
Well, I've had actually stories recently where people have actually split up and they're still living together because there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
Equally, there's some really interesting stories with people like using online dating apps and things like that. It's probably another podcast for another day, but it's you know, the stories you'll probably find out dating in the virtual world. You know, it's so interesting, and actually dating in the virtual world from a vein community perspective as well is even more interesting. So yeah.
Well, if you could put your Sims creation on Airbnb, then anything's possible, right?
Yes, and keep us posted on the cookbook, Rabia.
I will do, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Well, I don't know, you owe me a recipe. Man, if you have anything.
I will do. I will send it.
Oh, you're taking contributions, are you? Okay.
Yes, I am, yeah. And just a bit of a background as well on you know, why that certain recipe means so much to you.
So what's the context? You want a recipe that is...
So the recipe that makes you feel good when you
Right.
cook it, and that you and your family enjoy, and why you enjoy it, and what the kind of background story is. I've had so many different background stories from a friend that you know, is originally from Kerala, and she said when, you know, her mum taught her how to cook it, and every time she cooks it, she thinks of her mum, and, you know, great times of sitting with the family. So just things like that, really.
I think we should offer this out to the listeners as well. You know, please submit some suggestions. Yeah, and we could. This could be something that we could produce after the lockdown.
Brilliant. That would be great.
I've really enjoyed the talk with you today, Rabia, and yourself, Sunil.
Oh, it's been brilliant. Thank you, Rabia, and I hope you enjoy the Ramadan period as well.
Yeah, good stuff. Be good, be kind, stay safe, everyone, and we'll speak soon.